we are very pleased to be joined by Rob Butler. He is a Tip O'Neill Award recipient in the great year of 1993, a former Major League Baseball player and a former World Series champion for your Toronto Blue Jays. Enjoy the interview. Perfect. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Memorable moments as a Blue Jay.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, the most memorable for every professional baseball player when they get called up to the big leagues is their first day. The first day was incredible, really. I mean, getting called up was incredible, right? I was in Syracuse. I had just turned 23. It was 1993. I had only played. I was in A-ball the year before, so I skipped AA, went straight to AAA. I had no thought or intention that I might make it to the major leagues, really, to be honest, even though I was in AAA. But anyways, probably June 12th, my manager, Nick Leva, he basically, the manager comes up to you and says, congratulations, you're going to the major leagues. And you flip out, like you freak out. Because it really is a dream that you have. Like when I was your age, all I ever wanted to be was a Major League Baseball player, not really knowing what that meant or what it takes or how to do it. I just wanted to be a Major League Baseball player because that's what I saw on TV. So when it actually does happen, it really is a freak out kind of moment where you are sort of not even inside your body anymore, right? It's like the greatest day that's ever happened to you, like the best news you could ever get. So, and for me being from Toronto and wanting to play for the Blue Jays so passionately, that made it more intense, right? More intense. I didn't even know where they were playing. I had to say, like, where am I going? Am I going to Toronto? Well, my first game was in Detroit. So my first game was in Tiger Stadium. Mm-hmm. And I went 1 for 4 in the game. I got a hit in my last at bat off a guy named Tom Bolton. He's a left-handed relief pitcher, and I got a hit off him. But I was nervous. I was scared to death. I went from playing in front of 1,500 people to playing in front of 48,000 people.
Wow.
And most were from Canada.
Yeah.
So it was very surreal. That first day was pretty incredible. My parents came. A bunch of my friends drove to Detroit, and they'd never seen me play. A bunch of them had never seen me play a professional baseball game. So their first time seeing me play professionally was actually in the major leagues, which was cool for them, kind of surreal for them as well. It'd be kind of like you seeing Guru playing in the big leagues 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? One of you guys is going to go see one of each other playing the big leagues, and it's going to be the most amazing thing.
Wow. Cool. And then Gru, I think you have a question that you want to
How do you think the game has evolved since your playing days, and what impact did the Blue Jays have as a franchise on the game?
Well, the Blue Jays had a major impact on Canadians, on me as a kid. I remember in 1977, the first game, and seeing it in a newspaper. That's how we got our news back then. We didn't get it on the internet. It didn't exist. We had to read a newspaper or watch it on one of the 7 channels that we had on TV, which was CTV or City TV. I don't even think they have those anymore. But so for them coming and creating all these heroes that I fell in love with, that I couldn't wait to watch, that I would skip school to watch play spring training games and scorekeep with my little scorekeeping pad when I was 14 and 15 years old, had a huge impact. Everybody in Canada loved the Blue Jays. Everybody. It was a real Canada-wide thing, and because they were so good at making people love all their players. Jesse Barfield, George Bell, Dave Stieb, Barry Bonnell, oh my God, Ernie Witt, Buck Martinez. I can go on and on. Al Oliver, so many guys, Bob Baylor, all these guys that you wouldn't remember or know of, but they made huge impacts on us kids. Because back in those days, you played hockey or baseball. A lot of hockey players that are in the NHL, that played in the NHL, played baseball in the summertime. So it was the 2 sports that we played. So when the Blue Jays came, baseball was the thing. It was huge. We all could not wait to watch a Blue Jay game. And they used to be brutal. They used to be the last place team every single year until 1984, 1983, 84, when they got Dave Stieb and Willie Upshaw and all these guys who kind of started to turn the franchise around. So, and across Canada, it almost became our game over hockey for a little while there, right? Like the Exhibition Stadium where they used to play was sold out. the Sky Dome, 4 million people every year, sold out for, God, 7, 8 years in a row. Way bigger than hockey, right? So it was really important and made a huge difference in my life because I got to do something that kind of kept me away from. I grew up in Maine and Danforth. I grew up in a little bit of a hoodie kind of neighborhood with some troublemakers for a kid who were my friends, and so baseball kept me away from that. Kept me and my brother kind of safe and in a good place.
Nice. And then you talked a little bit there about the home crowd, about how everybody loved baseball. What was it like as a Canadian rookie and a Canadian player playing for the Blue Jays, where everybody in Canada supported them?
Well, to be honest, it was very difficult. It was very hard. I was one of the only players that played for the Blue Jays. I was from Toronto, actually born and raised in Toronto, played all my baseball in Toronto, right? Some of the players before me were from other parts of Canada, right? Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Quebec. Danny Boucher is from Quebec. So I was one of Rob Ducey from Cambridge. I was probably the first and only guy from Toronto. So that was a different kind of feeling growing up, 10 minutes from the Sky Dome, and so much more pressure to, to be honest, I didn't really even know how to handle that until they all started asking me, because I wasn't really asked those questions when I was in the minor leagues. No one cared that I was Canadian. Like, it wasn't really ever brought up. You know what I mean? Until I got to Toronto, and that was the first thing they asked me. You're a Canadian. How do you feel? And I was like, oh my God, I'm a Canadian. I'm freaking out. So you kind of like, you really felt that weight of really the whole country on your back, because that was asked of me every single day, right?
Wow.
How I was handling it. I wasn't handling it very well. I was very nervous all the time. I definitely let it get in the way of my routine. Like, every baseball player has good routines before the game, how they do their things, how they warm up, everything is scheduled and routine, and that kind of got lost when I got to Toronto. It was confusing and hard. But you know what? I had a good team. I had good teammates. They took care of me. Some of them put me under their wing, and they shielded me from a lot of stuff that I didn't really realize was happening around me. Because I also struggled a little bit when I first got there. Right when I was in the minor leagues, I was batting 330, 350 all the time. When I got to the big leagues, I was batting 240. I was getting one hit in the game. It was different. It was harder. Right? Major leagues, there's no higher league. Major leagues is pretty damn tough. You know what I mean? I mean, every league is tough. What you guys play is tough. I came from where you guys played. I know how hard it is. I was 11, 12. How old are you guys? 12, 11?
13.
10?
13.
13, yeah. So I wasn't even playing. I was only playing house league when I was your age, right? So
Wow.
5 years from now for you guys, I was starting center fielder on the Canadian Olympic team, playing in the Olympics against all these future major leaguers. And 10 years after that, I was playing in the major leagues.
Wow.
So it was definitely a different road of preparation for me, and even for my brother, because we only played baseball in Toronto. We didn't go to America to play baseball. We didn't go to college. We just played high school, and played house league in East York, and we played on our East York rep team when we were 16 and 17. And after that, we basically went to the national team and went pro. So we didn't have a lot of prep like you guys all have now. Like, you guys get coached by major leaguers now who can tell you how things are going to be and what you got to do and
Just
how
like
hard.
you.
Right? So it was definitely difficult. I would say being from Toronto and the only guy from Toronto on the team, I was the only Canadian on the team. It was hard.
What would you say that the biggest difference between the major leagues and the minor leagues is? I know you already talked about the difficulty, but is there anything else pretty big that you could speak on?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are different. First of all, you get paid in the major leagues. You don't get paid in the minor leagues. When I was in the minor leagues, I was making $850 a month. My salary for one of the years was $6,000 as a professional baseball player.
Jeez.
And I had to pay my rent, buy my own food, and survive. So we had to live with 5 guys, right? Completely different world. No food, long bus rides, a lot of struggles, hardly any fans. Driving the bus all night long, go to the park, go to another diamond in another city the next day, get out and play that day. There's no days off, right? Way less days off. Way much more of a grind than the major league life is. Major league life is difficult because it's so competitive and so difficult because everybody's the best in the world. their minor league life is so difficult because it's such a grind of
Mm.
struggle. No money, you're always tired, you're always sore. Everybody's trying to make it to the major leagues. So even though they're your teammates, they're still your competitors trying to get called up to the big leagues.
Mm.
And you get to the major leagues and suddenly you make a little bit of money, there's better food, you fly in airplanes all the time, you're on way less buses, the equipment is better, the locker is better, the bathrooms are better, the shampoo in the shower is better, the soap actually cleans you off, things like that. Like it's a it's a very different world, the major leagues from the minor leagues.
Mm. Okay. During your time as an MLB player, all time, did you have any favorite teammates that you had?
I had a lot of favorite teammates. Pretty much almost everybody that I ever played with was a great teammate. That time and to this time now is very different. You really fought for each other back then. That was the expectation. Like you were basically brothers and family when you were any kind of professional athlete, minor league or major league, back in my time. I'm sure it probably is somewhat like that now, but there was no showboating or bat flips or showing people up or pimping home runs or any of that stuff was going on. That never happened. If you hit a home run, you ran around the bases pretty much almost as fast as you could, probably 70% of your actual speed. You had your head down, you didn't look at anybody, touched home plate, got back to the dug, got your high fives. Nowadays, it's show you up, point at dugouts, pointing at each other.
Put on the home run jacket.
Home run jackets
Yeah.
and all that stuff. That would have, back in the day, probably started a lot of problems and probably some fights on the field because it was just a very different world back then when I played compared to now. It's definitely a different game.
From what you describe it sounds better than the league now.
Yeah, it is. It was more intense, more fun.
You're right.
Everybody kind of played on the same team for a long time as well. Players didn't flip teams as fast as they do now or look for more money to go somewhere else. Players took less money to play on teams that they liked, right? So for me, it was like Darren Dalton when I was with the Phillies. He was one of my favorite teammates. On the Blue Jays, it would have been Dick Schofield, Pat Henkin, Woody Williams, Pat Borders was amazing, Roberto Alomar, Tony Fernandez, John Olerud, Dwayne Ward was really good. These are guys that I hung out with. Al Leiter, we hung out and had dinner all the time. You know what I mean? It was a fun team. When I was with the Phillies, we definitely did different things for fun. It was a different cultured team. They like to go out and do more things together away from the field. So Kurt Schilling and obviously Darren Dalton, Mickey Morandini, Kevin Stalker, we were all very tight, best friends. Right? If they needed anything, everybody would have came and helped each other. That's just the way that whole culture is set up. And if you show that you're not willing to do that, you don't stay very long. Right? So I would say that's probably some of the differences from what I can kind of see on, from what I hear and what I see on TV.
Okay. And then two different questions here. So as spring training has just started, and all the players have reported to camp, what's spring training like as a player? And also, with this year's notably slow free agent market, how do you think that would feel as a player not being signed and spring training's already started for every team?
Well, I know that players don't like to not be signed, right? I know that they definitely would prefer to be raring to go in spring training right now. Spring training was different when I was, it's funny, when I was coming up, we were told not to work out, not to weight lift, not to do anything, to be kind of relatively in shape, like run or swim or things like that. But there was no weightlifting. There was no gym. There was no weightlifting gym anywhere with the Blue Jays back when I played until, 3 or 4 years in. So it was always a nerve-wracking time when February started to roll around. You start getting nervous and excited about anticipating what's going to happen. The players are all, everybody. One thing I'll tell you, everybody when they go to spring training and you start to talk to guys about really how they're feeling, they're all very nervous, excited but very nervous. It's difficult, right? It's a tryout. Like spring training is basically a tryout for a lot of guys. Some guys who have their 3 or 4 year contracts, even though they have a contract, they can be traded. I was at a few spring trainings where guys are under contract for 3 or 4 years, got traded, right?
Right.
So they didn't think that was going to happen. So you're always kind of on edge of playing well and doing the right things and staying healthy. You got to stay healthy, or you can't help the club when they say you're in the tub, right? If I'm in the tub getting iced down because I'm hurt, I can't help the team. So you're always aware of that injury could happen or something could take you away from your best friend. So spring training is an exciting time, but a scary time, I would say. I definitely know the players are more prepared now. People train year round; they don't stop. I've thrown batting practice to Joey Votto in the wintertime, and he's training nonstop. He might take maybe a month off, but after October, November, he's back going hardcore. So that's kind of the new way of doing things, I would say.
Okay. Okay. So, how does it feel being a rookie on a championship team?
Well, in 1992, I was watching the Blue Jays on TV. I come home from the minor leagues, so I was watching the games on television at home. I was watching the World Series parade. I went down to the World Series parade to watch them as a team. And then 1993, unexpectedly, I was in the World Series parade.
Right.
Which is pretty amazing in itself.
Yeah, it's a big difference from just watching and just inspiring by the people that are in the parade, and next thing you know, you're in the parade the next year.
Yeah, it was very interesting for me and my family to be down there watching the players because they were our idols. Like we loved the Blue Jays, and then actually be a part of the team and be in the parade was very surreal. Winning the World Series doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen to rookies very often, and it doesn't happen to Canadians very often.
Right.
I think I was the third Canadian to win a World Series, an actual World Series. So it was a rare thing. I was, I think, the sixth player to appear in a World Series. I was Canadian. I was the eighth Blue Jay to play for the Blue Jays from Canada, the first from Toronto. And I was the only Canadian to win a World Series with a Canadian team. So, and to do it as a rookie was pretty unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
My whole season was a whirlwind of craziness from spring training. I was trying to make the Double-A team in spring training '93, and I ended up making the Triple-A team. So I jumped a level, which was hard because all my teammates that I was coming up with, Carlos Delgado and Sean Green and all these other guys that were going to get to the big leagues later on, they were my buddies and they were my closest friends in baseball. And I wasn't with them anymore. I was with a bunch of older guys and some guys who played in the big leagues before. So when I actually got called up, it was a real whirlwind of like craziness. Like you're inside a washing machine, tumbling with all these clothes. Like I didn't even know how to handle all that. It was just a different, crazy, fast feeling going on. And then my 11th game, I actually got hurt. I broke, I tore a ligament in my thumb against the New York Yankees. I just got a hit, and I stole second base. I tore a ligament in my thumb. That kind of sidelined me I didn't come back until September. I missed July and August playing and developing and learning the major leagues, and had to come back in September. So I had no expectation of even playing the World Series. We clinched. We clinched against Milwaukee near the end of the season. I think we had 7 or 8 games left before the season ended. We clinched a playoff spot. Well, back then only two teams made it to the playoffs, so it was a different way to do playoffs back then. Only 4 teams total made it. So I got to play in the last 8 games, and I went on a pretty good string. I got a bunch of hits. I think I got about 8 or 9 hits pretty quick, and I got put on the World Series roster. So at the end of the season, there's a 40-man roster that they had, like, guys get called up in September. So you have all these September call-ups. And then you also have your regular team, your 25 guys. So I didn't even know that you still have to make the 25-man roster to play in the World Series. So I had no idea this was happening until Cito Gaston called me and Dick Schofield into his office and told us that we were on the World Series roster, that we'd be playing in the World Series if we got to the World Series. We were in the playoff roster. And I was like, I didn't even know that happened. I thought we were all on the playoff roster.
Right.
It was still like another tryout at the end of the season, right? So all that couldn't have happened. They could have decided to not put me on the playoff roster. It could have been Turner Ward or somebody else that wasn't put on. And instead they put me on it. And I got lucky and got to play in the World Series. I went 1 for 2. I got a hit in the World Series in Game 5. And, the rest is kind of history.
So right now the Blue Jays have a mix of experienced veterans and promising young talents. How do you think this balance contributes to the team's dynamics, and what challenges does it present if it does?
Well, there's a lot of challenges with the Blue Jays. They don't have, from what I've seen with the young guys, while they're, as you guys can all see when you watch them, a lot of great talent, but great talent doesn't win really anything, right? There's a certain mix of competitors who are willing to grind it out for the team, for themselves, right? For the organization, who just do things differently when it matters, right?
Yeah.
Back in my time when the Blue Jays were winning, it took them 8 years to finally win it. And from 1985 to 1991, I guess that's 6 years, but math is off. They had great teams, but they didn't have that right mix. They didn't have, you know what I mean? They had a really good closer, but they didn't have a great clutch hitting lineup. Then another year they had great starting pitching, but they had lost some of their bullpen. So there's always parts that struggle. And from what I've seen with this group, with the Blue Jays, they don't have the whole mix of a group that truly wants to win, that's willing to sacrifice and play the game properly, approach the game properly, getting, like if there's guys on second base, getting guys over, they're trying to hit too many home runs, they're striking out too much. They're not doing all the little things. And there's these little things that always happen that help you win games. You win 3-2 games. You don't lose 3-2 games. And that's the way when the Blue Jays were winning, those are the things that they did. If we went into the seventh inning with a 3-2 lead, we won all those games, right? The Blue Jays in the last couple of years, for some reason, they don't win those games. And when the playoffs come around, their top players seem to fade away.
Like getting kicked off
when they're
second
winning,
base.
Joe Carter, Paul Mahler, Roberto Alomar, Tony Fernandez, Dwayne Ward, Tom Hinkie, those guys came through and did the job, right? That's just the difference. Those guys were a different kind of grinding group, that they had the will and the know-how of what it took to win. And for some reason, it worked, right? Everybody thinks New York Yankees are going to win every year because look who they buy. They buy everybody, right? Mm-hmm. They bought Garrett Cole, automatically thought they're going to win, didn't win, right? Whoever else that they paid hundreds of millions of dollars for.
Aaron Judge, they re-signed him.
Like it doesn't mean you're going to win. It has to be the right mix of a team, people. Everybody stays healthy, and everybody is clutch. Everybody has to be clutch.
Okay.
Yeah. When you sorry.
Go ahead, Group.
I'm just saying, like when you compare the Jays to someone like the Rangers or Diamondbacks who are in the World Series, you can just see that difference in clutch and when pitching needs to be done, and just in general, when stuff needs to be done, Blue Jays sometimes cannot follow through with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. They used to rely on, for 100 years, people would watch players and follow players and talk to them and get to know them a little bit and see their mental toughness and watch their mental toughness. Do they hustle all the time?
Right.
You know what I mean? Do they get 2-strike hits? Do they get hits with guys on second and third? Things like that. And that's don't do that much anymore.
Yeah, that's what makes a big impact on the players, and how good they are. So
yeah, they don't do that much anymore. They follow numbers, and most of those numbers may not be clutch numbers. A guy might hit 30 home runs, but none of them may be when it actually really mattered.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Rob, when you watch the major leagues now as a former player and a World Series champion, what do you watch for, and what maybe do you notice that average fans might not notice?
Well, I definitely know what's going on. I know I can kind of see the nuances of what's happening. I don't know. I watch it more for the entertainment now. I find it entertaining, the stuff that goes on. Baseball was getting kind of boring and long and dry, right? When you're playing it, when I played, it was intense. But when you're watching it, it wasn't as entertaining as it is now, right? Mm-hmm. There's more music, there's walk-up songs, there's more things going on. The players are more animated. The players are having, more fun doing things that we weren't allowed to do when we played. So it's more interesting to watch, definitely. Now they have the clock on the pitchers. It's way more fun to watch. Like I enjoy going to games now and sitting there and not waiting for 4.5 hours for a game to end.
Right.
So it's definitely quicker and more interesting. The players are more athletic. They're stronger, right? They're faster and they're stronger.
Yeah.
They're not tougher. in no way are they tougher than when I played or before my time. Before my time, it was crazy intense. I mean, they played with no helmets on before I played. So I don't think the players are definitely nowhere near as tough as when we played. There's no question. I think anybody who played up until probably 1999, 2000 will tell you that the toughness of the players has drastically changed. It's nowhere near what it was when I played.
Mm.
Hold on.
Go ahead, Drew.
Sorry, my computer's being a little bit weird. In the highs and lows of your career, what kept you motivated?
Well, I would definitely say, well, first of all, I was always motivated. I love baseball so much, and there's definitely lots of highs and lows. There's a ton of failure in baseball, right? You get up 100 times and you're getting out 70. A lot of times you got to deal with getting out and the struggles, right? And a lot of times those struggles happen in a row. So, you can go 0 for 15 and, how do you deal with that? And you got to go, then you go, seems like you're going 6 for 5, you're getting so many hits. It's like you got more hits than at bats and you're like on a just crazy high and you're like, but the baseball will always bring you back down to earth, always humble you. And that's the greatest lessons that you learn when you're a kid, right? You guys are all struggling when you're playing. You know, it's like to not get hits and struggle, right? Nobody gets 4 or 5 hits every game. There's ups and downs. Professionals are, and especially the major leaguers, handle that the best. They're able to block a lot of things out. They block the fans out, right? Even if they know there's 10 million people watching on TV, they're not even aware of that. They're able to do their mental routines and talk to themselves mentally. So which is what I did. I would say that, when I was struggling in the major leagues, it was definitely something that was harder for me, which is why I was kind of a struggling major leaguer, right? I did a lot more years in AAA than I did in the major leagues. I was kind of like that 4A kind of player that was stuck in the middle because it was difficult to find that confidence to play every day, that your coach is going to put you in the lineup from day one, you play all the time, to where you're playing every 5th game, or you're just a 4th outfielder, you pinch hit in the end of the game and you're facing closers all the time. So dealing with that was very difficult because you feel like you're not good enough to start on the team, but you're good enough to face the best pitcher that's coming in throwing 100 miles an hour, right? He's only pitching for 1 inning and you got to face that guy, which is what I did a lot in my career. So it's hard. It's definitely difficult to deal with the failure in the major leagues because you want to stay there. You want to do everything you can to stay there, but that's why they're special people. That's why there's only 800 of them on the planet, right? There's only 800 Major League Baseball players on the planet because that's all that should be there. That's all that's good enough to be there, right? So it's definitely teaches you a life lesson for later in life. That's helped me with my work ethic for leaving baseball, right? I'm committed to my job. I work harder. I show up on time. I know what it means. If you miss the bus, you're done. You never miss a bus, so you never show up late for work. So these are all things that carry on and transfer over into your real world, and just the way I handle my family and my family life. And I appreciate my family because I spent 15 years away from them. So I know that being a family guy and all these things that you learn what's more important.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. How does it feel to get the Tip O'Neill Award for the best Canadian baseball player that season? And what advice would you give to younger Canadian players aspiring to be in the MLB?
Yeah, it was pretty fun getting the Tip O'Neill Award. I didn't know what it was when I got it first. I didn't know there was a Canadian Baseball Player of the Year award because I've never heard it. Because it was so different then. Right now, everything's on the internet. You can see. It was like you won the Tip O'Neill Award and they shook your hand in the clubhouse, and that was it. Now they put it on the internet and people to see it. You know what I mean? So it's different. But it was a tremendous honor for me to get it.
Right.
There was probably 4 or 5 of us Canadians in the major leagues at that time. There wasn't very many. Right? It was Larry Walker, myself. God, I can't remember who would have been back in the big leagues back in '93. Maybe Matt Stairs was there. So it was special. Definitely, 100%. Right? To be Canadian Baseball Player of the Year, 1 year, one chance, one time in your life is, pretty sweet. It's kind of a recognition that you did something good and you represented your country really well, right? And you did the right things that you're supposed to do when you're a kid and growing up and wanted to be a Major League Baseball player and doing well. And I got lucky to play on the best team in the world, right? I was one of the 25 best players on the whole planet at one time. So
Yeah.
it was pretty damn special, right? Not saying anything spectacular about myself, but it's just a fact. There's only 25 of us. So, you know, but for when I was a kid, the greatest thing that happened to me was getting cut. I got cut when I was 12 from the East York All-Star team. So I played only house league. I got cut when I was 14. So I was very small. I was very weak. I was left-handed. When I was 16, they wanted me to be a pitcher only because I couldn't hit. I couldn't hit the ball to the outfield when I was 16. I was the weakest hitter on my East York baseball team. And I basically pitched more than I hit. So my dad said, you know, enough is enough. We're going to teach you how to grind life out. I got my summer job working in a factory. I grinded it out every day. Got to work at 7 a.m. on the subway. Right after work, ate my hamburger on the field, did my practice every day, started weightlifting, started riding my bike, swimming. I used to run the East York Hill at the back of Stan Wadlow there. And I started hitting balls into the pool and onto the clubhouse. And it's all just from grinding it out. You guys got to grind it out, man. You start to learn what the grind is, right? You want to go to every game to play as hard as you can. On the field, off the field, it's always running. You're always hustling. You're sprinting on, sprinting off. You race each other off and on the field. That's the stuff I did, right? I learned how to grind it out, how to be mentally tough. You know, most of my life, I played against older boys. I was playing against guys 2 or 3 years older than me. So it was difficult, right? I had a hard time. So for me and what I would tell you guys, you got to accept the failure, right? And that doesn't mean that you're happy when you fail. It means that you go home and you figure out, what did I do? What do I need to do differently? Do I need to make my body stronger? Do I need to make my mind stronger? Do I need to throw the ball against the wall more? Do I need to hit more? Do I need to do more push-ups and sit-ups? Because those are the things that changed my whole baseball world. I didn't do any of that stuff until I got to be 16 years old. And my whole world changed once I really figured out that I need to grind this out, right? I wanted to go to America to play. If you guys get to go to America, it's the best thing in the world for you to learn how to grind it out. Play against the best kids in the world. Go play where it's tough. Get in the car for 7 hours. Get your mom and dad to drive you to New York somewhere. Drop you off, play a 4-game tournament. Don't miss a game. Don't miss an inning. In July heat. No water, no food, no subs between games. Eat after the game. Play baseball on an empty stomach. And you will learn how to tough it out, man. And you'll go way farther in all of your world. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, just like grinding, as you said, can teach you very valuable lessons that you can use wherever in life. And it's just enjoyable as you go.
Yeah, the grind is the key. Loving it is the key. No matter what happens, good or bad, you enjoy the ride, man. Because baseball is a fun game and it teaches you a lot. And make sure you're always a good teammate. The worst thing when I was a kid, and I grew up in East York, when East York was tough, East York was crazy man town, you had to play for your teammates, right? Mm-hmm. If you didn't do that, you didn't play East York House League, let alone East York Rep or East York anything, right? And those are valuable lessons you got to learn now. You always pick your teammates up and you always expect to be picked up, which means if you strike out with the bases loaded, a teammate's patting you on the back and saying you're going to get them next time, right? You're not saying, what the hell's wrong with you? You suck. These are the things that never happen and should never happen, right? Okay. Those are the valuable lessons you need to carry forward. If you can learn to be the best teammate now, you'll be a great person to your wife, to your kids, to your dog. You will love everything in your life, and you start practicing now, appreciating all the things that are around you.
Okay, awesome.
Okay,
well, thank you so much for doing this, Rob. You're the first guest we've ever had on this podcast.
I'm your first guest?
Yeah, first guest ever.
Holy cow. Yeah. Through and grew. I'm your first guy and I'm a Major League Baseball. How cool is that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. And one last thing. Do you know anybody else we could interview? Like, know anybody else?
Well, there's tons of guys you could interview. Start with some of the guys that work at these batting cages. Some of these college guys.
Okay.
Right? There's lots of guys around. You gotta just ask them, how do you get to college? What do you do? How do you that's a huge information. Like, what kind of marks do you gotta get? How much does it cost to go to school? How does the school find you? All those things, right? So ask a college guy, and they're all around. Call a batting cage. They'll love to talk about their life. Some of these guys can't wait to talk about how amazing they are.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Rob. We're
Thank
gonna
Thank you.
end it now. We appreciate
Yep.
it. I'll see you
Thanks,
on
Drew,
Saturday.
Brew, and
Thank
Fru.
you very much.
Okay, see you guys.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye.